So first of all, Parshas Nasso. Parshas Nasso is the Ron. I'm all hooked up, right?
Yeah.
So you have a good boy today. Parshas Nasso is the longest parsha in the Torah. It is 176 psukim. It's not the longest laning. The longest laning is one of the double. Is I think Vayakel Pikude when it's a double. Either Vayakel Pikude or is Vayakel Pikude when it's a double header. That's the longest laning. I think that comes out to about 224, something like that. But Parshas Nasso is the longest parsha. It has 176 psukim. The longest Masechta in Shas is Baba Basra. That has 176. Goes to Daf Kuf Nun Vav. Even though it starts on Daf Bezos, it also goes to 176. And the longest kapitel in Tehillim is Kuf Yud Tes, which also has 176 psukim. And of course, the significance of the number 176 escapes me completely. I have no idea what the significance is. I've never found it. Doesn't work for any gematria or anything that I'm aware of, but you'd have to figure out, find out some source. But that is a fact. It is 170. Maybe if you multiply, how much is 176 times 3? Anybody know? It's 600 minus 24 minus 72 is 528. 600 minus 70 is 528. 528 is the gematria. 528 is the gematria of Kuf, Taf Kuf, Chaf Beis, Takchab, which has absolutely zero significance. Okay, so here we go. Parshas. I tried, man. What can I do? You get reward for trying in this room. What can we do? Okay. So let's start with Parshas Nasso. First of all, if you take a look at the Torah starts with in Perek Hey Pasuk Yud. Okay, the Torah continues the counting for a change, right? The Torah, and if you go to page 750, 752. And the Torah talks about giving a certain things to the kohen, and in 4 lines of the Torah it says, "V'chol truma l'chol kodshei b'nei Yisrael asher yakruvu lakohen lo yiyeh." Any truma that the Jewish people give, it should give to the kohen. They give to the truma, and then it says, "V'ish es kadoshav lo yihiyu, ish asher yitein lakohen lo yihiyeh." A man, his holy things should be for him. Then it says, a man that gives to the kohen, it should be for him. So this pasuk needs an explanation. Take a look at Rashi. Rashi is the left column, halfway down. V'ish es kadoshav lo yihiyu. Lefisha nemru matnos kahuna v'leviyah. Because the Torah mentioned. If you find it, please show the person next to you. Because the Torah mentions the gifts of the kohanim. Lior, can you close the door over this? We'll keep the air conditioning thing. The other one also, thanks. Lefisha namra matnos kahuna v'leviyah. Yachol yavo v'yitlu bizro. You might have thought that kohanim could come and take their gifts by force. Right? The Torah says the kohanim are entitled to certain things, so you might have thought the kohen could, walk in and take whatever he wants. Talbid lomar. The ish es kodoshav lo iyu. Therefore, it teaches us each man, the holy things are his. What does that mean? Do you have to give it to the kohen? Magid, this teaches shetovas hana'asam l'bailim. Tovas hana'asam l'bailim means that the benefit of giving it to the kohen, it means when you give somebody a gift, you have a choice of who to give it to. I enjoy giving, for example, let's say where it's Truma today. And let's say there's another kohen in the room. Is there another kohen here? Okay, so now you have a choice. You can give it to him, or you could give it to me. Right? Now, who would you prefer to give it to? Honestly, don't answer that. So if you have it, I can't come over and take it because you may have decided to give it to him. And therefore, you get the benefit of choosing who to give it to. At the end of the day, it's got to end up in the hands of a kohen. Hey, somebody give Itamar what do you call a chumash? If there's an extra chumash on the shelf over there, Yonah, please pass out the chumash. Okay. Number 1, Umedrash Agoda. Now pay attention carefully. Umedrash Agoda. 4 lines from the bottom. This is the Rashi we want to get to. This is the subject we want to get to today. The Ishes Kadoshav Lo Yiyu. What does that mean? Misha ma'akev ma'asrosov ve'eno nosin lo, ve'eno nosin, one who keeps his tithes for himself and doesn't give it to the kohen. Vishes kadosh, you're supposed to tithe your produce, tithe your money, give the truma, and let's say you don't give it to the kohen. Lo iyu ha'maisros, you'll have a tenth, meaning sof she'ein sadeu osa ela echad me'asara shehaisa lemuda lasos. Then your field will only produce 1/10 of what it produced. In other words, taking the Medrash, taking the pasuk slightly out of context, says you will be left with your tithes. If you don't give it to the kohen, you'll be left with your tithes. You'll have 10% of what your field produced. Now, the Mefarshim over here say, first of all, that the idea of giving away, and we've spoken about this in the past several times, how when you give tzedakah, then the more you give, the more you get, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu ultimately is looking for somebody who is a loyal distributor of his goods. And whatever you have, it comes from Hashem. He's looking. The more loyal you are, the more He'll give you to distribute. And therefore, it becomes an upward cycle or a downward cycle, depending on how you handle your finances and how much you give away. That's number one. Number two, the commentaries say, Ish es kodoshav lo yihiyu. The Chafetz Chaim compares it to a man who had 3 friends. And the man was summoned to the king. The first friend decided, as soon as he heard the summons, he says, hey, I'm not going there. You go to the palace, it's not good for you. Right? It's not good for you to go to the palace. The second friend was willing to accompany him to the palace gates. At least he walked them up to the gate. But once he got to the palace gates, he says, listen, you're on your own. I'm not going in there. And the third friend was the only one who was willing to go in with him to see the king. So the Chafetz Chaim says, a person has money, you have material possessions, you have family, and you have mitzvahs that you've done while you were alive in this world. When a person dies, so then the first thing that leaves you is your money. Right? Your money doesn't go with you at all. Right? You've been summoned to the king. On the spot, the money says, no, I ain't going up there. Money, you can't take it with you. You can't take it with you. There's a guy who was sitting once in a restaurant, and he's bragging to a friend about how rich he is. He says, I am so rich. I am so rich. Nothing could take my money from me. And just then this cheeky waiter passed by and says, no, but you can be taken from your money. Right? Which is true, and a person never knows when it's going to happen. And so a person, number one, his material possessions, they don't go with you at all. The family, they go with you to the gates. They're the ones who, when the bare body is dropped into a pit in the ground, so the family is there weeping around the pit in the ground. But nothing goes beyond that point except mitzvahs and ma'asim tovim. Nothing that a person does in this world is worth diddly-poo once a person goes up there. Once a person goes up there, it's a mitzvahs and ma'asim tovim. Not all sorts of achievements and not all sorts of prestige and not all sorts of what you got to the contrary that works against you. And therefore, the Torah is telling you here, Ish es kodoshav, the holy things you've done. And I don't like using the word holy. It's only because that's how things are translated. Holy gives it an implication of too much, too much religiousness, religiosity. I don't know what the word is. Like say, oh, I'm so holy because I put on tefillin. Oh, I'm holy because I gave tzedakah. I don't like using the word holy. The holy gives it a priestly type of sense. It means anything significant that you've done in your life. There's only one thing significant. If you do mitzvahs, if you help a little old lady carry her packages, that's significant. That's a mitzvah. And if you light a Hanukkah menorah, that's a mitzvah. And if you put on tefillin, that's a mitzvah. And if you eat chont on Shabbos because there's a mitzvah to enjoy Shabbos, that's a mitzvah. That's already significant. You got to do them all, by the way. You can't just. I told you I had a guy here once who told me on Erev Tisha B'Av. He said, Rabbi, the guy wasn't, was kind of getting familiar with Yiddish. He says, Rabbi, I really don't enjoy Tisha B'Av. I said, really? Are you serious? I mean, I kind of like that little nagging headache, like early in the morning for mid-morning, you get a little headache, and then some lower back pain from sitting on a low chair. The guy's looking at me like, what do you think? I said, of course you don't enjoy it. Who enjoys it? No, you're a Purim guy. Right? Why do you don't enjoy it? Who does enjoy it? Well, oh, good, Tisha B'Av, my favorite. Who's enjoying it? So you don't enjoy it. That's part of the game. You got to take the good with the bad. You got to take the bad with the good. You got to do it all. So those are Ishes Kodosh of Lo Yiyah. That's the, what do you call it? Now I want to tell you an intriguing medrash. I was puzzled by this medrash for a long time. until I saw an insight, a very interesting insight into how we approach life. And this opens up a kind of an idea that people are often overlook. The Medrash says there on this pasuk, the Medrash says that there was a guy who he didn't tithe his wealth. He didn't give as much tzedakah as he should have. And then one day he was gripped by a spirit of folly, and he went into his wine cellar and he took a club and he started randomly smashing his wine barrels. He just started destroying his wine barrels. And his son came down and he saw what his father was doing, so his son picked up a club and he started helping his father smash the barrels. That's what the Medrash says. Why? Because he didn't tithe properly. And when I say, have you ever seen anybody do that? Have you ever seen anybody go in and purposely go smash their merchandise? Anybody? I've never seen a shopkeeper yet who goes and smashes his merchandise. Right? So I don't understand what's the Medrash trying to communicate. Remember, Chazal said a Medrash, they're trying to communicate an idea here. And the Medrash says he had a ruach ra. He had some sort of a spirit of folly that gripped him, and he went and he started smashing his head. The answer is, it could very well be that we've never seen people smashing their barrels, but I'm assuming you have met at least someone in life who made an investment, and then you heard him say, "What was I thinking when I invested in it?" You never heard somebody say, "What was going through my mind when I made that deal? What was going through my mind when I trusted them?" Right? What was going through my mind? I was in prison. Not I was in prison. I gave a lecture. I was actually in prison twice, but I was once for jaywalking. I actually got arrested for jaywalking. Yeah, in Chicago the cops were tough, so I got arrested for jaywalking. I once got arrested for something else, for disturbing the peace. But and even that wasn't my fault. We just drove through an area where the cops had said to clear the area, and we drove through, and they said you're not supposed to be driving here, so you arrested us for. So I was in prison twice. But I was once in prison in Israel to give a lecture, and what do you call it? So I'm a jailbird. And the what do you call it? I was talking to this guy in the prison yard after the lecture, and the guy was about 6'4". I'm not. And I was talking, I was schmoozing with this guy. This is a prison in Israel. They had a program for making Bali Tshuvas in these prisons. They were actually running a program here. Anybody who became a Bal Tshuva in prison, they let him out. Early, and I said to the guy who was running the program, I said, "Well, anybody who put on a yarmulke to get out of prison, you know." He said, "No, they do follow-up statistics. The recidivism rate among those who leave prison was 70%, which is the return to prison, and the recidivism rate among those who became observant in prison was 6%. So they were actually funding this program." And so I'm talking after the lecture. I'm talking to this guy in the prison yard, and this is a prison. This is hard criminals. These are murderers, armed robbers, hard crime. And so I said to the what do you call it? I'm talking to this guy, and I said to him, "What are you in prison for?" And he looks at me, he kind of gives a sideline. He goes, "I trusted the wrong people." Now, that is a classic response, by the way. There was no one in that prison who was actually guilty who did anything wrong. Every single one of those guys was there because they trusted the wrong guy. Sure, you trusted the guy who told you won't get caught when you're a counterfeiter. Sure. So the what do you call it? Now, what made you do something foolish like that and trust the wrong guy? Why would you do something like that? The answer is that when you made a bad investment, why did you make a bad investment? Why did you make a good investment? Most people think that when they made a good investment, I had this idea and I opened this business, but where did you get the idea from to open the business? We think that the decision is ours, and then either we made a foolish or a good decision, and that's why we had the results. But what gave you the idea to begin with? Where did the idea come? The idea sometimes dropped, maybe always dropped into a person's mind based on HaKadosh Baruch Hu somehow gives a rabbi at Ohr Somayach, drops an idea into his mind that he should make an investment and become very, very wealthy very, very quickly. I'm just saying, it could happen any day, right? It could happen any day. Now, what a brilliant idea I had. No. Even if the idea came into you, that's what the Medrash is telling you. The same way that this guy could suddenly be gripped by a spirit of folly and go smash his barrels, of course, Baruch says, "Hey, you're not tithing your money properly. You're going to tomorrow, how about this?" And also you take a look and say, "Wow, that looks like a really good investment." And of course, we could create the temptation. And then the person goes and he invests. Next thing you know, he's broke. That's what the Torah is talking about over here. Now, look at the next section. In Pasuk Yud Beis starts one of the most intriguing concepts in all of Torah. And this is the woman who is unfaithful or suspected of being unfaithful to her husband. V'daber Hashem al Moshe lemor. Daber al b'nei Yisrael v'marta alehem. Ish, any man. Ki siste ishto, when his wife veers off, she strays off. Umal lo omal, she is unfaithful to him. She commits it. The article translates a treachery against him. Now, the first question is, what happens? Then the Torah goes on to describe that the husband suspects her of infidelity, and then he brings her to the kohen. Now, I'm sure you've all heard some version or other of this, but let's just get all the misconceptions set aside. They bring her to the Beis HaMikdash, and they make a public spectacle of her, and they take God's name and write it on a parchment, and they dissolve it in the water, and she drinks the water. And if she's guilty, right, that's the misconception. She does not explode, right? Everybody think, yeah, give her a drink. Oh, look out, hit the deck. Look out, here it goes, and boom. It's not a Monty Python after dinner mint. It's like, look out, boom. Her stomach swells up. What's that?
Don't forget your hard hat. We got a fat one.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's not what happens. Look out, guys! A bulletproof vest. She what do you call it? Her stomach swells up, and she dies a painful, gruesome death. And the adulterer dies also, by the way, even though he didn't even drink the water. He's off location. Right? Hey, Frank, you feeling okay? I got, my stomach's starting to hurt a little bit. What have you been doing? Right? So the what do you call it? So she dies a painful death. If she's innocent, so then there are two opinions in the Gemara. One opinion that says she didn't have children previously, she'll have children. And there's another opinion that says, no, she's not going to have children, but if she had painful births, up until that point, her births are going to be less painful. She's going to have smoother birth. That's the basic outline of what goes on over here. Now, the first question is, why does this section of the Torah follow the section dealing with a person who does not tithe properly? Well, what happens over there? Why does that happen? What's the connection between the two? Why is not tithing eventually brings? So Rashi brings down, well, if you didn't go to the kohen to bring him your tithes, you're going to go to the kohen to bring him your wife. Right? You didn't go to him to give him the money you should have, so you're going to have a different need to go to the kohen. Okay, that's cute, Okay, guy didn't give tzedakah, therefore his wife's going to commit adultery, or suspected of it. What happened over here, first of all? Second of all, how do we even get to this point? So what's required here is a set of circumstances. A guy has to warn his wife. He has to say to his wife, I don't want you to be secluded with Ploni. Right? I don't want to see you alone. You must not be alone with Ruvain. He's got to give her a warning. And then she goes against his warning, and she secludes herself. She is alone with Ruvain. Then he takes her, and he brings her to the kohen. And then the kohen, under those circumstances, gives her the drink. If we know for a fact that she committed adultery, in other words, there were witnesses to the adultery, or she admits she committed adultery, she does not drink the water. If there were witnesses, then she's liable for, if the circumstances are correct, she could actually be executed. That's a capital offense. If there are no witnesses, but she admits to it after the husband had warned her, then she leaves the husband. She does not collect payment for her ksuba, which is the marriage contract that every couple has to have, and she is not allowed to return to her husband. She is considered an adulterous woman. She's not liable for the death penalty in Beis Din, but she better do tshuva, or she's certainly guilty in the eyes of heaven, what we call chayiv bidei shemayim, right? So she's in trouble. She's chayiv kares, and she's in trouble. She better do tshuva. That's if she admits it. Now, what if she doesn't admit it? So, like I said, they take Hashem's name and they erase it on the water, and then she drinks the water. Now, the question here becomes like this. The first question, we'll deal with this one point at a time. The first question is, what kind of lady are we talking about? Who are we talking about here? Who's the Torah addressing? Who's addressing a Beis Yaakov girl who got married? She wears a tichel, right? She may have 6 kids. Just like any frum woman you've seen on the street. we're not talking about a girl in the University of Arizona campus over here. We're talking about, you're talking about a girl who's, what do you call it? I was just on the bus. Just now this morning on the bus, I heard two Israeli soldiers were speaking. I'm looking at my sefer and I'm hearing they're talking pretty loud. The whole bus heard them. And one of the guys is a medic in the army, and he says he just had a girl came over to him. She was begging for a pregnancy test because she's trying to get out of the army. She's begging for a pregnancy test. Okay, there, she's a single girl begging for a pregnancy test. Probably, she has good reason why she's asking for one. And that's simple immorality, but it's not a capital offense. Here you're talking about a frum married woman who's, what do you call it? How did she even get to the point where her husband should suspect that she's with frum men who go to Daf Yomi shir, and they're in, what do you call it? They're learns in Kolal, and she says, I don't want you to seclude yourself with Plony, who's who knows what, he's the local community chazan or something, who knows what. So the answer to that is, and the commentaries say that a person has to maintain a certain standard. The minute you let a crack through, what they call it in English, the slippery slope. The slippery slope. Once you allow one chink in the armor, then it goes, you keep pushing it a little bit. The classic example would be if you sit down at a table and one day you decide to, I don't know about this hechsher. Well, I think it's a good hechsher, and you eat the food anyway. The next day, since that was okay, the next day you get the food that doesn't have any hechsher at all, but you look at the ingredients. I don't see any pork in there, must be okay. The next day when you're hungry, but the next temptation, then it's probably not kosher, but it's not actual meat, and you eat that. Next thing you know, you're eating pork. Because you pushed it, boom, 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 boom. You push the limits. And the more you stay, the more you push on this side, the farther you go on this side, the more you push. But the minute you have to stay strong. Now, so there was a guy visiting the house on Shabbos, and he's a cute guy from Yeshiva, and they were chit-chat at the table, and he was talking to the husband and to the wife, and then they invited him back another Friday night, and the husband went up to sleep early, it's late Friday night, and he was helping the wife clear off the table, chit-chat. Then he came back a third week, and he took a walk with the wife. What are you doing with another man? What are you doing with another man's wife? What's happening over here? That means nobody is completely protected, especially in the area of the Gemara says, Eina putropos la'arayos. When it comes to immorality, nobody is not, what's the word? The opposite of vulnerable. Immune, correct, thank you. Nobody's immune. And therefore we take all precautions in this area of life because we recognize how vulnerable people are. So you could take a woman who is, she says Tehillim all day and she only speaks Aramaic, and the next thing you know, her husband is warning her not to seclude herself with somebody because nobody is immune in this area of life. And that's how she gets to this point. Now, the bigger question becomes like this, and it's an interesting idea, a concept in Torah. When a person has a halachic question, who do you go to?
Rabbi.
I go to a rabbi. And what does the rabbi do if you have a halachic question? He opens up, either he knows it, or he looks up the sources and he gives you an answer. Never in history has there been a posek, a prophet, or anybody else who, when you asked him the shaila, he closed his eyes. I'm feeling it. Just 1 second. Yes. Ruach HaKodesh says the spoon is treif, right? Or Ruach HaKodesh says that your mezuzah is fine, right? You look it up and you have to paskin based on what you know of Shulchan Aruch. And if you don't know, so you say, I don't know. But never has there been any sort of divine intervention in a halachic process. They're divine prophets, and the prophets had prophecy about the destruction of Yerushalayim and when Yerushalayim is going to be redeemed and when Mashiach has got all these wonderful things. But never about, yes, it's treif, it's kosher, it's puzzle, it's usher. That's not part of the halachic process. The halachic process is you open the sefer, you study the poskim, you open Shulchan Aruch, and you come up with a psak. All of a sudden you got a guy, and what happens when a guy has leprosy? We learned all about leprosy. Who does he? He also goes to the kohen. And what does the kohen do? The kohen takes a look at it. And the kohen paskins, based on his knowledge of the laws of tzaras, yes, that's tameh, yes, that's tahor, yes, you have to be closed off for a week or two. That's how the kohen paskins tzaras. All of a sudden, the Torah says we have a situation where they come to the kohen, and the kohen says, well, why don't you tell me what happened? Well, there's this guy. I don't like the way he's been looking at my wife. I like the way my wife's been playing footsie under the table. And so I warned her not to be alone with this guy. And, then I come downstairs. There they were alone in my room. Was there a set of Monopoly there in the room? Yeah. Well, she's okay. They're probably playing Monopoly. Was there an encyclopedia in the room? Yeah, they're probably reading together. Was there, so the kohen paskins, no, there was nothing in the room. Oh, hanky-panky, she's awesome. Why don't you want to get upset from the kohen like you paskin everything else? Why is all of a sudden, so what do you do here? Okay, take Hashem's name, write it down, erase it, have a drink, lady. What bracha? I'm not sure. Borei priha adam. I'm not sure. Whatever it is, or you make a bracha achrona because it might be the last thing you do. So I don't know exactly what the bracha is. Why all of a sudden you get Hashem divine intervention over here? What's going on? Why is there divine intervention? The answer is, imagine you're the husband, and you go to the kohen, and the kohen said, they were playing Risk. Yeah, they're probably playing Risk. She got Australia. Oh, so she probably won. She even probably won. And I don't know. Come on. They did play Risk. They didn't play Risk. I don't know. So the kohen says, don't worry, she's okay. The husband will never ever be able to live with his wife without the gnawing doubt of did she or didn't she. There's only one thing that could restore that marriage to the harmony that it originally had, if they had any. But there's only one thing that could restore it, and that's if HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself gets involved. So the Gemara says, hold for a few minutes. The Gemara says, for the sake of Shalom Bayis, which teaches you how important Shalom Bayis is, for the sake of maintaining marital harmony, HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows his name to be erased for the sake of convincing a husband that his wife, who he suspects, she's obviously done something inappropriate, yet for the sake of their marital harmony, HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows his name to be erased. That's how important Shalom Bayis is. More than that. The Medrash says that Rabbi Meir was giving a shir. And there was a woman who attended a shir. It was on a Friday night. She came home from Rabbi Meir's shir. She came home late. And her husband was upset. Where were you? I was at Rabbi Meir's shir. So the husband says to his wife, you're not setting foot back in the house until you go to Rabbi Meir and you spit in his eye. Rabbi Meir's the gullo. It's like somebody who said to you, you're not coming home until you go to Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky, that's all, and spit in his eye. The guy would say that to his wife. So the wife didn't know what to do. She's wandering the streets. She's wandering outside Rabbi Meir's basement. In the meantime, Eliyahu Hanavi came to Rabbi Meir. There were Ruach HaKodesh, different opinions in the Medrash, and told Rabbi Meir what had transpired between the husband and the wife. So Rabbi Meir sees the woman outside the base Medrash. He says, lady, come here, my eye's hurting you. I need some human saliva in my eye. It's the only cure. I want you to spit in my eye 7 times. So she's like, what? He says, no, it's the only, I'm telling you, I know what this ailment is. Spit. So they said, okay. So she spits in his eye 7 times. So Rabbi Meir says, okay, now go home and tell your husband, you told me to spit in Rabbi Meir's eye once, and I feel that I did it 7 times. Now go home. So she scampers off happily. So the Talmidim said to Rabbi Meir, okay, what was that all about? Now we know that, what's going on? So Rabbi Meir told us, why didn't you tell us what was happening? We would have gone to the house. We would have applied some physical therapy, and he would have been glad to take his wife back. He would have taken his wife back good and proper. We'll learn how to behave. What was that all about? So Rabbi Meir said, look, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu is willing to allow his dignity to be compromised by having his name erased for the sake of Shalom Bayis, I could allow a woman to spit in my eye for the sake of Shalom Bayis. I could compromise my dignity for the sake of Shalom Bayis. That's what the Medrash says. So the Chazal say, that's what Hashem is teaching us here. Hashem is teaching us. By the way, now that you've heard the happy story, the interesting, humorous story from the Medrash, guess what the lesson here is here, gentlemen? Guess what the lesson is? Probably the most important thing I'll ever tell you. When you're married, gentlemen, you're going to have to set aside and willing to compromise your ego and your obstinacy. I'm saying you because the best defense is a good offense, right? Because men are the problem when it comes to marriage. Because men have an ego, men have to do it their way, and men have to, it's always the men. If a husband treats his wife properly, they'll have Shalom Bayis. And if there's no Shalom Bayis, it means he's not treating her properly. Because women are programmed to reciprocate. And if there's trouble, the husband said, yeah, but she's listen, it's you. It's you. And if you treat her properly, she'd reciprocate. And since, what's that?
Never the wife.
It is after the husband creates a problematic situation. When the wife, listen, you can't have two women in the home, right? Women, we cut them some slack if they're a bit emotional, considering that their body is never the same for a week in a row. They're going through cycles and this and that and pregnancy and nursing and this and that. So if they're a little, if they're a little unpleasant at 2 a.m. after being up 4 nights in a row with the baby nursing, so we could cut them a little slack. Men are pretty consistent, except maybe Shabbos afternoon. Men our bodies are pretty consistent, right? Women, and we're a little bit more in control of our emotions, even though we're babies. We're a little bit more control of our emotions, but you have to cut women slack. And number one. And number two, it's more fundamental than that. It's not never. Nothing is a never. You get problematic women. There are problematic women. But the wife wants a good marriage. The husband simply wants to have everything his way. Men are takers. I'll tell you a story. This woman goes to the man goes to the doctor. So the doctor says to him, doctor examines him. He says, I go in the waiting room. Why don't you send your wife in? So the wife comes in, and the doctor says to the wife, listen, your husband is very, very ill. You have to make him 3 fresh, nutritious meals a day. Don't ask him for money. Don't nudge him. Don't fetch. Just make sure he's completely comfortable, and don't ask him to do anything around the house. And if you don't follow my instructions to the letter, your husband may die. So I goes, whoa. So she walks out, and the husband said, well, what did the doctor say? What did he say? She looks at her and goes, he said you're going to die. Men go into marriage thinking that the wife is just going to cater to every wish and women desire. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. And the Torah is telling you what interferes, and in my experience both in my own marriage and dealing with people's marriages, men have egos. Women are willing to suppress their ego. Men have egos. You ever hear the expression, when you're wrong and you give in, you're smart. When you're right and you give in, you're married. Right? And you have to learn to just give in. Every man goes there, who said it should be done your way? Who decided? Just because you could out-yell her? Just because you could shout louder? Therefore it should be done your way? Who said so? That's what the Torah is teaching you. The Torah is teaching you it doesn't have to be your way. And you have to learn. The Abarbanel, the classic commentary, the Abarbanel asks in Sefer Bereshis, why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu make it so difficult? Why couldn't he have created men and women different biologically for the sake of reproduction, but logically, emotionally, intellectually, we should be exactly alike? Then you could have dinner, and you could plop down on the couch together and watch a football game, and we all enjoy it because that's a mutual interest. But no, you want to watch a football game, and she wants to go to the Italian opera and hear some lady wail about how her husband killed her boyfriend, and you're not really interested. Why is that? Why are there different interests over here? Why not make it all so simple? I'll tell you a scenario you're going to go through. I'm telling you, you're going to get nailed by this. You go home and you say to your wife, you want to go out to eat tonight? She'll say, what do you mean? She'll say to you, what do you mean? Like, which word didn't you understand? Do you want to go with me to eat? What was not clear? What was not clear about that? Which word did you understand? All right, so where's her confusion coming from? Because if your wife wants to go out to eat, you know what's going to happen? You're going to walk into your house, your wife's going to say to you, do the lights look dim in the living room? The lights look dim in the living room. No, the lights don't look dim. We actually put in new lights 2 weeks ago. She's telling me the lights look dim. She's telling me she's been in the house all day. She wants to get out. She wants to go out to eat. The answer to do the lights look dim is milchiks or fleischiks, right? Because she wants to go out to a restaurant. Now it's just a question of milchiks or fleischiks. She obviously wants to go. So where's her confusion? Because when women have a habit, instead of speaking and saying exactly what they mean, they kind of speak like this, right? Why make it clear if I could speak in circles? So when you say to your wife, you want to go out to eat, she suspects that's not what you mean. So first, oh, you don't like my cooking? Now, what's going through her mind? He doesn't like my cooking. He doesn't like my mother. He doesn't like me. He doesn't like, I'm hungry, lady. I just want to get a hamburger. What's the big deal over here? So why did Kodesh Baruch Hu make it so tricky and difficult? Why did Kodesh Baruch Hu make it so difficult? How come when your wife starts fetching, you're not supposed to make suggestions? First rule in the book. Oh, every time I wait for the bus, I end up waiting 20 minutes. Oh, we really have to get a bus schedule. Wrong. Cut. What are you supposed to do? I hate when that happens. They love that. Oh, I hate that. When every time I try to reach from the high shelf, my back starts to hurt. Oh, we need to get more hooks in the house. No, wrong. Just go, ooh. So I always tell guys, when you get married, give you golden advice. Walk around with a pocket full of either peanuts or M&Ms or something. And every time your wife fetches, just plop a few in your mouth and just go, You'll be happy. She'll be happy. Klal Yisrael will be happy. Everybody's happy with that. Everybody wonderful. All right, I'm being slightly facetious, but not much. Right? Why is that? So you know what Barbanel says? Barbanel says marriage was created as a challenge so that men should learn to suppress their selfishness and their own ego and give to somebody who is so different than themselves. How do you like that? How do you like that? That's what the Barbanel says. Not what Kaplan says, what the Barbanel says, right? A person who wants to succeed, so the Torah tells you, that's a little bit of ego, set it aside. HaKadosh Baruch Hu could put his ego aside, we could put our ego aside. That's what the classic, that's the Torah approach, that's the Torah approach to marriage. So I'm oversimplifying things a little bit, it's a lot harder than all that, right? But I'm oversimplifying it, but that's ultimately what it boils down to. That you have all the control, and you know the Gemara says that you have to honor your wife more than yourself? You know that? It says, Ohava kegufo, you have to love her as much as yourself, umechabda yoser bigufo, and respect her more than yourself. Which begs the obvious question because there's a lack of symmetry. It should say you love her as much as yourself, and you respect her as much as yourself. Or it should say love her more than yourself, and respect her more than yourself. Why is there a discrepancy? Why is there a lack of, when you love her as much as yourself, and respect her more than yourself? Why is that? The answer is that we all love ourselves, and we all take very good care of ourselves. If you take care of your wife's physical, material existence as well, you take care of her, you'll be doing very, very well. Because we all take care of ourselves. We're good to ourselves. When it comes to respect, she is a different level of sensitivity. It's not a joke, by the way. I've told you, watch two women speaking to each other. When two women speak to each other, they basically make intense eye contact, generally from about 3 or 4 inches away. They basically turn their heads in sync with each other, and all you hear them saying things like, oh, 100%, oh, me too, oh, I know exactly what you mean. Two men sit back to back and basically say things like, you're out of your mind, you're crazy, that's not true, oh, mine is so much better. And these are best friends. Now, the problem is when you take one of these species, and put them in a cage together, now what? Yeah, and then the wife says to the husband, Harold, you're not listening. You know, I hear every word you're saying. You're not listening with your eyes. Oh, I see. Eyes are for listening. I didn't know that. I thought eyes are for seeing. No. I'm finding out that, and you'll find out pretty quick. And therefore the Gemara says, the way you chill with a guy, I don't care if you're looking at me, and I don't care if we're sitting back to back. You know, we can have a whole conversation for 2 hours sitting back to back, never making eye contact. But your wife demands that. Not that she demands it. Her essence demands it. She needs to know that you're focused on her. That's the idea of Shana Rishona. What's the idea of a Shana Rishona? First year of marriage, the Torah says openly. By the way, both times that the written Torah discusses the marriage relationship, twice. And both times it details the husband's obligation to the wife. How do you like that? And the Gemara in Ksubas talks about the wife's obligation, but the written Torah says it twice, both times the husband's obligation. Why? Why does it talk about the wife's obligation? Because she's going to do what she has to do. Don't worry about her. Worry about her. Worry about you. Worry about what you have to do. That's what the Torah is teaching us. All right, we'll continue with this tomorrow, Mirz Hashem.